MidLIFE Matters, where we celebrate women's wisdom and wit. I'm Georgian Lussier, your host, and I'm delighted to introduce today's guest, Eloise Tencher. Eloise hosts a radio program, owns 2 restaurants in Middletown, and is on a quest to resolve issues regarding her son's death, a story she will bravely share with us. So welcome, Eloise.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And as I've mentioned already, you recently lost a son.
Yes.
And you are determined to seek justice for the circumstances surrounding his death.
Yes.
So if you'd like to share some of that story.
My son, Phillip Schaal, was a top-ranked rock climber, and he did bouldering, which is without the ropes. He was at a gathering in Brooklyn, New York, where he lived. Just a, small gathering in somebody's apartment, and someone came in with a homemade drug, and someone slipped it into his drink in that group of people. And his body wasn't used to these drugs, and he went into an instant coma. He was able to find a chair and just sit there, and he passed out, and 3 weeks later he died. He went into a coma, and the people with him went to bed. The next day they got up, they went to work. 16 or 18 hours later, somehow the paramedics came, and it's not clear whether they dragged his body to the side of the road, and a bystander called 911. I'm not sure how that happened, but they stole his wallet and his cell phone, so he arrived at this hospital as an unknown. And the people fled, and they went to a mutual friend's apartment and in a panic, and they left the cell phone and the wallet there, and then they left, and somehow they found our number at Brubaker's in Middletown, one of our restaurants, and they were able to get the phone number and call my husband. They were calling me, but I was in Chile at the time. I had just arrived. And so my husband was, he thought the guy was kidding. He thought it was a joke, but it wasn't. He insisted, no, I need to talk to Eloise. And since I wasn't there, my husband gave him my son Billy, who lives in New York. He gave this guy the phone number, and Billy was able to go to a hospital and identify his brother. And then they found me 2 days later, and I took the first flight back to New York, and I was with my son for the next 2.5 weeks until I decided. I moved him from the hospital in Brooklyn to Columbia Presbyterian because I knew they had the best doctors there, and I wanted him to have the best. And as soon as I got there, they did an MRI, and they showed it to me, and it was evident that his brain was completely gone. And I had to make the decision to disconnect him, and it was really, really hard, but I didn't want to keep him alive anymore. For what? Just so we could go and hover around him. And so we let him go, and I was with him, and I gave him lots of hugs and kisses, and my son was there too, and just his immediate family, his cousin, his uncle, my husband, and my son's father. He had died some months prior to that in California. He wasn't present. That's how that happened. And then the police did nothing whatsoever, the Brooklyn police. I went to 2 different precincts. They didn't get him. They wanted nothing to do with us. And yet these people allowed my son to stay in a coma. Had they reacted within the first hour, perhaps they could have saved him, but they didn't. They neglected him, and they didn't seek help, and that is now I'm after justice for my son and spreading the words. I'm very open about this, and I want everybody to know that it could happen to me, it could happen to you, anybody. This does not discriminate, and these drugs are 10 times deadlier than when I was young, you know, back in the early 70s. These are serious drugs. A lot of people are dying from drug overdose.
Well, that's a heartbreaking story, and I'm sure our viewers are very interested in where you are with it now. You recently were able to make contact with someone who you think might take a second look?
Yes, yeah. I wrote some letters to the Attorney General of Connecticut, and he forwarded the letter to the Attorney General in New York, in Albany, and they made the connection to the DA's office in Brooklyn, and they called me, and I went in, and I spent an hour with them, and they actually treated me with a lot of respect and seriousness, and not like the police at the precincts that treated me like it was my fault, like I was his bum, you know. Like now we wait and see, and they said we can't promise you the results. We can promise you that we're going to try our very best to come up with some answers.
Wonderful.
And that's, I feel pretty good about that. So we'll see what happens, but I am seeking justice, and I'm not going to stop. If that doesn't work, I'm going to the New York Times, I'm going, you know, to the New York Post. I'm going to the media. But I'm not going to give up until something is done, because these people are dangerous people, and they're out there.
It does seem very inhumane.
Very, yes. Yeah, life is nothing to them.
And you have some plans to honor his memory. I know you had a beautiful memorial service. What other things are you thinking of?
A lot of his friends have contacted me because they wanted me to send them some ashes. And these are all rock climbers. So some rock climbers went up to Mount Hood in Washington. They're from out west. And they threw his ashes on the top of Mount Hood, and they put a little packet of ashes underneath some rock that was very special. Some people in Colorado, some people in Tennessee, I mean, different places. I am taking his ashes to Switzerland. Actually, half of his ashes, because I'm used to having him home, and so I'm going to keep half of his ashes for me. I am planning on going with my son Billy and Joseph, my husband, to Switzerland, to his favorite place to climb, which was in southern Switzerland in a place called Valle Versaska. And that was his favorite place, and he is a Swiss boy. He was a Swiss boy because his dad was from Switzerland. And he was very proud about being a Swiss boy, you know, and so that's a plan. But of course my son Billy is an actor, so trying to get his schedule, we're pretty flexible. We can wiggle things around, but he's the one that, but you know, to spread ashes, you can wait for the right time.